My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 37 years old, a captain in the United States Army, and up until last Thursday, I thought I understood what loyalty meant. I've led my team through 6 deployments, 3 combat zones, and 1 classified mission that no one outside a 2-room bunker in Virginia will ever hear about. But none of that prepared me for what I heard in that briefing room. The lights overhead buzzed, too bright for the cramped space they stuck us in. My back was soaked with sweat under the starched collar of my uniform, but I didn't shift, didn't blink. Just stared at the man who was supposed to have our backs, watching him speak like we were some minor inconvenience in his day. Brigadier General Whitaker stood at the front of the room, arms folded, mouth tight. When he finally spoke, the words didn't match the tone. No medals, no thanks, just a cold announcement. Our mission was successful beyond projections, but according to him, we'd made the others look bad. Effective immediately, we were being reassigned. No promotions, no commendations, just a new post and double the admin work. I didn't say a word, just glanced at my team, seated around the conference table like ghosts. Ramirez looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. Simmons kept staring at the general, eyes wide, like maybe he'd misheard. Fletcher clenched his jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitch from across the room. It wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. General Whitaker called it a realignment. Said our numbers made others feel demoralized. That in the interest of morale, we'd be redistributed. I wanted to laugh. We were punished for doing too well, as if excellence was something to be ashamed of. Like rising above the average was a threat to the structure he wanted to preserve. He called it balance. I called it betrayal. I kept my arms crossed, my boots planted. He didn't deserve a reaction. He droned on about cohesion, about not letting one team get too much visibility. Then, without even looking at us, he said the part that still sticks with me. He said, "You're not irreplaceable, you're just efficient." Then he walked out like the conversation was over. The room stayed silent long after the door closed. Fletcher was the first to move, scraping his chair back. Ramirez muttered something under his breath in Spanish. Simmons just shook his head and looked at me like I had answers. I didn't, not yet, but the anger was already moving through me, slow and thick like oil. We didn't bleed for stats. We didn't miss birthdays, funerals, anniversaries just to make a spreadsheet look pretty. We did it because we believed in the mission, because we believed in each other. And the system had turned around and spit in our faces. There's a moment after a betrayal that feels worse than the pain itself. It's that second when you realize it was never about performance. It was about control. And suddenly, every sacrifice you made feels cheapened. That's what was sitting in my chest as I looked at my team, men I trusted with my life, now quietly breaking under the weight of that dismissal. I didn't speak until we were alone again. No brass, no eyes on us, just the people who actually mattered. I said, "They want us quiet, they want us scattered, but I didn't come this far to disappear." Fletcher nodded once, so did the others. That was the moment something shifted. We didn't know what came next, not exactly, but I knew one thing for sure. They wanted obedience. We were about to give them something else. I didn't raise my voice, didn't storm out or slam a door. That's not how I was trained. The Army teaches you to take hits without flinching, and I'd taken plenty. But that day, I walked out of the briefing with a silence that was louder than any protest. It was the kind of silence that meant I'd already started thinking 5 steps ahead. Back in my quarters, I sat at my desk and pulled up every mission report from the past 12 months. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I knew I had to start keeping track. Every pattern, every closed door, every realignment order that smelled more like a warning shot. I created a folder and labeled it something boring. Administrative Realignment Review. No one would think twice. The more I read, the more it made sense. Promotions delayed without explanation. Awards requested but never processed. Commendations sent up the chain but never reaching us. It wasn't personal. It was systemic. The military didn't want winners. It wanted balance. And balance meant clipping the wings of any team that flew too high. I'd always believed loyalty was enough, That if you gave everything, the system would eventually reward you. But now, it was clear, we weren't seen as dependable, we were seen as dangerous. A unit that solved problems too quickly, attracted too much attention, and that scared the people in charge. The shift in my thinking wasn't fast. It crept in slowly, like a leak behind a wall. And then one night, it hit me, an email. I almost deleted it because I didn't recognize the sender. But the name stopped me. General Ray Morrison. Retired 2 years ago. A man I once served under in Iraq. The kind of leader who didn't care about politics, only performance. His message was short. He'd heard rumors. Knew about our numbers. Asked why every high-performing unit seemed to hit a ceiling and vanish. He didn't accuse anyone, didn't offer anything. Just asked a question. That was all it took. Something about that message lit a fire I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not revenge, purpose. I replied with a few lines. A thank you. A summary of what we were seeing. He answered back in minutes. Said he wasn't surprised. Said we deserve better. Then came the line I'll never forget. Maybe it's time someone built the kind of command structure the Army always claimed it wanted. I read that line over and over. That was the moment the silence cracked. I wasn't just going to gather evidence. I was going to build the exit ramp. Not just for me, but for anyone who was tired of giving everything and being punished for it. I closed the laptop, sat back in my chair. If they saw me as a threat, maybe it was time to act like one. I waited until the bass quieted down. No brass, no cameras. Just 4 men I trusted, gathered in the back room of the old motor pool, away from ears that might report back up the chain. I slid the blue folder onto the table. It wasn't thick, but it hit the metal like a weight dropping. Fletcher reached for it first, eyes narrowed. Simmons leaned back, arms folded, trying not to hope. Ramirez didn't move. He just stared at me, like he was waiting for a punchline. Inside that folder were the new orders. Not from Whitaker. Not from anyone we dealt with in the past year. These came from a division buried 3 layers deep under Pentagon oversight, off-grid. Mission-driven, fully funded. They were forming a new unit, and they wanted us. I explained what it meant. No red tape. No optics-first policy. Just results, better pay, full autonomy, real say in mission design. It was everything we'd always been told was impossible. At first, no one spoke. Then Ramirez let out a low whistle. Simmons glanced around the room like it was a trap. Fletcher just shook his head and said, quietly, why us? Because we earned it. Because they were watching. Because every time we delivered on something impossible, someone took note. We weren't just good. We were proof the system could work if it stopped protecting mediocrity. I laid it out. No guarantees, no revenge missions, just a shot at doing things right. No politics, no shadow games. If we took it, we'd be leaving behind the structure we trained under. But we'd be building something new. Fletcher looked back at the folder and asked the real question. Was it real? I nodded once. I'd spoken to Morrison myself. He wasn't making a pitch. He was giving us a lifeline. Simmons stood up, started pacing, said he had a kid, asked what would happen if it all fell apart. I told him the truth. It could. But staying here wasn't safe anymore either. We'd already seen what the system did to people who got too good. The silence that followed wasn't uncertainty. It was calculation. These men had seen too much to jump at the first flash of hope. But when Ramirez finally reached over and flipped through the first few pages, I saw something shift in his eyes. Not excitement. Something deeper. Something that felt like permission to believe. Fletcher exhaled hard through his nose. Simmons sat back down. No one smiled. No one needed to. It wasn't over yet. But for the first time in months, the air didn't feel toxic. They didn't say yes right then. But they didn't walk away either. As I closed the folder and tucked it back into my bag, I realized we'd hit the first crack in the wall. And maybe, just maybe, we were about to break all the way through. The morning we walked out, the base already knew. No alarms, no confrontation, just a quiet shift in the air, Our accounts were locked before sunrise. Email access gone. Badge swipes denied at every entrance but the front gate. Fletcher tried to print out one last document for his records. The file vanished mid-load. Ramirez's locker was empty, not cleared out, just gone, like he never existed. The kind of silent erasure that only happens when people upstairs want you to disappear quietly. Security didn't say a word, but their eyes said everything. No salutes, no nods, just blank stares, as if we'd flipped some invisible switch and crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Simmons said, "It felt like walking out of your own funeral." They let us take our uniforms, our medals, even the gear we personally paid for, but everything else, every trace of who we were in that system, was gone. Fletcher joked about them changing the locks on the gym. No one laughed. As we reached the gate, the guards didn't speak, just scanned us out one last time. I heard the buzz of the gate opening behind me, slow and mechanical, like a warning. Like the system wanted to make sure we knew what leaving really meant. We didn't look back, because the moment you do, it gets harder to keep walking. What we had now wasn't structure. It was uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time, it was ours. The first call came 2 days after we left. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before picking up. The voice on the other end was low and familiar. Whitaker. He didn't waste time with greetings. He said I was reckless. Said I was playing with fire. That I just nuked my own career. Then he said something that stuck with me. "We made you. We can break you." He hung up before I could answer. After that, the messages came in waves. Internal memos leaked. Accusations of insubordination. Claims we'd compromised classified intel. They painted me as unstable. Said I manipulated my team into a mass walkout. Called it a morale threat. A breakdown in chain of command. Simmons forwarded me a thread from a buddy still inside. The tone had shifted, whispers of betrayal. Officers saying I'd sold us out for money. It wasn't just damage control, it was character assassination. A quiet campaign to erase everything we'd ever done right. I started sleeping with my phone on silent and a note by the door in case anything went sideways. I wasn't scared for my safety, not really, but I could feel the weight of their reach. The kind of pressure that doesn't need force, just silence, isolation, doubt. Part of me wanted to speak out, to blast the truth loud and clear, let everyone know what had happened and why. But the other part knew timing mattered. One wrong move and we'd look exactly like they wanted us to. Bitter, out for revenge. So I waited, listened, and planned. Because I hadn't come this far just to lose the war by winning the wrong battle. The summons came in a sealed envelope with no return label. Just a date, a time, and a location inside a stone-gray building that hadn't changed in 50 years. I walked through the metal detector alone. No lawyer, no escort, just me and the truth they were hoping I'd fumble. Inside, the room was colder than it should have been. 3 officers at a long table, no smiles. One of them, Colonel Briggs, read the charges like he was listing groceries. Unauthorized use of department resources. Conspiring to form an unregulated tactical unit. Breach of operational loyalty. No emotion, just facts wrapped in fear. I stood in full uniform, not a wrinkle out of place. Eyes steady, hands behind my back. I didn't interrupt, didn't defend, just waited. That was the part they didn't expect. Calm, like I knew something they didn't. Briggs leaned forward, asked if I understood the gravity of my actions. I told him I understood the gravity of being punished for outperforming the chain of command. He didn't like that. The other officers shifted in their seats. One asked if I was forming a private army. I said no, I was building an honest one. The air thickened. They brought out documents, redacted statements, altered timelines, charts that claimed our missions fell short. I knew those charts, they weren't ours, they were doctored, designed to prove failure where there had been success. That's when the door opened. Everyone turned. General Frost stepped inside. Her presence silenced the room, less because of her rank, and more because of the Joint Task Force seal on the hard drive she slid across the table. She said the accusations were built on falsified records. She said Daniel Cross and his unit were selected by a confidential Joint Task Force to lead a prototype division focused on precision-based leadership and performance integrity. She said she had every document to prove it. Then she pulled up side-by-side screenshots. One from official archives. One from the ones they were using to accuse me. Edits. Timestamp mismatches. Login IDs tied directly to my former commander's account. Briggs went quiet. Another officer looked down at his notes like they'd just turned to dust. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Frost leaned forward and asked one final question. If the board believed in mission-first values, then why was excellence being treated like insubordination? No one answered. Because they couldn't. Briggs cleared his throat and announced that the charges were being dismissed pending further review. I nodded once and stood. As I walked out, I didn't look back. Frost followed, silent until the hallway swallowed the hearing room behind us. Then she said something I'll never forget. Next time they try to erase you, make sure they have to lie louder than you speak the truth. That was the day their illusion cracked. The day the weight I'd carried finally shifted. And the first time in months I felt like I could breathe again. The new division didn't look like much at first. Concrete walls, folding desks, patchy Wi-Fi, but the absence of red tape felt like fresh air. No waiting on clearance to move. No layers of approval, just the mission and the team. Fletcher took over logistics, Ramirez managed ops. Simmons focused on recon. We set our own schedules, debriefed on our terms, solved problems without politics. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Trust came back slowly, like muscle memory. We didn't have to look over our shoulders anymore. No one worried about saying too much in the wrong room. No more silent punishments. No more walking on eggshells. The first mission came fast. Civilian extraction in unstable territory previously would have taken a month to authorize. We moved in 5 days. 0 delays. No risk-averse higher-ups watering it down. Just a clean op plan and full autonomy to execute. We landed before dawn, moved on foot across 2 miles of rocky terrain. Ramirez led the breach. Simmons cleared the exit route. Fletcher coordinated air support with a private drone team. The civilians were safe and airborne in under an hour. We watched the evac chopper rise into the haze of morning and no one said a word. We didn't need to. The job was done. Efficient, clean, 0 casualties. That night, we didn't debrief in a fluorescent-lit bunker. We sat on the roof of the safe house, passed a thermos of coffee, and let the quiet fill in the blanks. Fletcher finally broke the silence. Said we used to dream about days like this. No one laughed, because we all remembered what it took to get here. That mission report got flagged by oversight, not for mistakes. For how fast we pulled it off without compromise. It set the benchmark for the division. Proof that performance doesn't need a leash. We weren't chasing glory anymore. We were just doing the job right. And for the first time, that was enough. The medal came by mail. No ceremony, no press. Just a plain envelope with a slip of paper and a small silver emblem clipped inside. The citation reads Service Excellence and Leadership under Adverse Conditions. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I needed the recognition, but because I knew where it came from. The same department that once labeled me a liability. 3 weeks later, I got the call. An invitation to speak at the Army Leadership Academy. Keynote. Topic: Adaptive Command Strategy. I almost laughed. A year ago, they wanted me quiet. Now they wanted me quoted. I accepted, not for the spotlight, but because I wanted to look a few of those young officers in the eye and tell them what leadership actually costs. Not in theory, not in bullet points, in lost sleep, in walking away from a broken system, in betting on your people when the structure tells you not to. The day I spoke, I wore the same uniform I had at the hearing. Crisp, clean, unflinching. The medal stayed in the drawer. It wasn't about the medal. It was about proving that doing the right thing is still something worth teaching. I used to think loyalty meant staying no matter what, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a system that's forgotten what it stands for. Leaving wasn't rebellion. It was clarity. It was reclaiming the values we were supposed to protect in the first place. If you've ever been punished for doing things right, know this. You're not the problem. The system is. So here's my question. What would you build if no one was there to hold you back? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one,